Guys, it's Jasper, and today I'm going to be reading a story from Tales of Arabian Nights.
Non più tra I farfalloni amoroso, notte giorno di torno girano, delle belle turbando al riposo, Narcisetto d'amor, delle belle turbando al riposo.
If you have never read anything from Tales of Arabian Nights, well, lucky you, because I decided today I would read the opening of Tales of Arabian Nights, which is called
Non più tra I farfalloni amoroso,
King Shahar and Scheherazade. I know, I just know all the things.
Now, pairing with our lovely tale, I am going to be having a great big cup of coffee.
Because I'm so sleepy today, and it's a rainy, cloudy day, which means it's a perfect day to drink nothing but coffee. Until nightfall. Then we'll break open the wine.
So, as always, pour yourself something lovely to drink, relax, enjoy, and cheers.
Sweet, sweet, sweet coffee.
How it began. There was, in ancient times, a king of India and China, possessing numerous troops, guards, and servants, and he had 2 sons. Both of these princes were brave horsemen, but especially the elder, who inherited the kingdom of his father and governed his subjects with such justice that the inhabitants of his country and whole empire loved him. He was called King Shahar. His younger brother was named Scheherazade and was king of Samarkand. Each of them ruled over his subjects with justice for the period of 20 years. At the end of 20 years, the elder felt a strong desire to see his brother and ordered his vizier to repair to him and bring him. He prepared for his brother handsome presents such as horses adorned with gold and costly jewelry, and also mamelukes, female slaves, and expensive stuffs. He then wrote a letter to King Scheherazade, expressing his great desire to see him, and having sealed it and given it to the vizier, together with his presents, he ordered him to strain his nerves, tuck up his skirts, and make haste to go and return. The vizier answered, "I hear and obey," and forthwith prepared for the journey. He proceeded night and day over deserts and wastes until he drew near to the city of Samarkand, when he sent forth a messenger to inform King Scheherazade of his approach. Whereupon the king ordered the chief officers of his court and the great men of his kingdom to go forth a day's journey to meet him. And they did so. They walked by his stirrups until they returned to the city. The vizier presented himself before King Scheherazade, greeted him with a prayer for the continuance of his power and blessing, kissed the ground before him, and handed him the letter. The king took it, read it, and said to the vizier, "I will not go until I have entertained thee 3 days." Accordingly, he lodged him in the palace, befitting his rank, accommodated his troops in tents, and so they remained 3 days. On the 4th day, the king equipped himself for the journey, made ready his baggage, and collected costly presents for his brother. He then sent forth his tents, camels, mules, and servants, appointed his vizier to be governor of the country during his absence, and set out toward his brother's dominion. King Shahar, rejoicing at the tidings of his approach, went forth to meet him, saluted him, and welcomed him with the utmost delight. He ordered that the houses and shops should be decorated, and on the occasion, and, escorting his brother into the city, entertained him with sports, mirth, and hunting. Now it happened, one day, that the 2 kings went forth alone from a private door of the palace to walk by the sea. They walked until they arrived at a tree in the midst of a meadow, by a spring of water on the seashore. They drank of this spring and sat down to rest, and lo, the sea became troubled, and there arose from it a black pillar, ascending toward the sky and approaching the meadow. Struck with fear at the sight, they climbed up into the tree, which was lofty, and behold, the black pillar was a genie of gigantic stature. broad-fronted and bulky, bearing on his head a chest. The genie landed and came to the tree into which the two kings had climbed, and, having seated himself beneath it, opened the chest and took out of it another box, which he also opened. There came forth a young woman, fair and beautiful, like the shining sun. When the genie cast his eye upon her, he said, "O lady of noble race, whom I carried off on thy wedding night, I desire to sleep a little." And he placed his head upon her knee and slept. The damsel raised her head and saw the two kings in the tree. She removed the head of the genie from her knee, and having placed it on the ground, stood under the tree and made signs to the two men, saying, "Come down. Fear not this Ifrit. But if ye do not come down, I will rouse him, and he will put you to a cruel death." So being afraid, the kings came down to her. She then took from her pocket a purse and drew from this a string upon which there was 98 seal rings. "Know," said she, "that the owners of these rings, unknown to this foolish Ifrit, gave me all these. Therefore, give me your 2 rings, ye brothers." So they gave her 2 rings from their fingers. Then she said to them, "This evil Ifrit, whom I hate, carried me off on my wedding night, put me in this box, placed me in the chest, affixed to the chest 7 locks, and deposited me thus imprisoned in the bottom of the roaring sea, beneath the dashing waves, not knowing that some day, while he sleeps, I shall slay him, in accordance with this that says one of the poets, 'Never trust a woman, nor rely upon their vows. They offer false affection, for perfidy lurks within their clothing. For greatly indeed to be wondered at is he who hath kept himself safe from woman's artifice.'" When the two kings heard these words from her lips, they said to one another, "If this Ifrit hath so great a calamity, what will befall us if we have aught to do with women? From now on, let us keep ourselves safe from the artifice of women." And immediately they departed and returned to the city. As soon as they had entered the palace, King Shahar caused his wife to be beheaded. And henceforth he took a new wife every day, and he ordered her to be killed the morning after the marriage festivities. This he continued to do for 3 years. And the people raised an outcry against him and fled with their daughters. Such was the case when one day the king ordered the vizier to bring him a bride according to custom. The vizier went forth and searched and found none, and went back to his house in great fear of what the king might do to him. Now, the vizier had 2 daughters, the elder of whom was called Scheherazade, and the younger, Dinarzade. The elder daughter, seeing her father sorrowful, said, "Why do I see thus changed and oppressed with solitude?" When the vizier heard these words from his daughter, he related to her all that had happened. "Oh, my father," said Scheherazade, "give me in marriage to this king, and either I shall die and be a ransom for one of the daughters of my people, or I shall live and be the cause of the deliverance from him." "I conjure thee," exclaimed the father, "that thou expose not thyself to such peril." But Scheherazade persisted in her determination, and persuaded him until he arrayed her and took her in to King Shahara. Now Scheherazade had read many histories of ancient kings and works of poets. And before going to King Shahar, she gave directions to her younger sister, saying to her, "When I have gone to the king, I will send to request thee to come. When thou comest, do say, 'Oh, my sister, relate to me some strange story to beguile our waking hours, and I will relate a story that shall, if it be the will of Allah, deliver me from death.'" So her father, the vizier, took Scheherazade to the king, who, when he saw her, rejoiced because of her goodness and beauty. But Scheherazade wept and said, "O king, I have a young sister, and I wish to take leave of her." So the king sent for Dinarzade, and she came to her sister and embraced her. And after she had waited for a proper opportunity, she said, "Oh, my sister, relate to us a story to beguile the waking hours of our night." "Most willingly," said Scheherazade, "if this virtuous king permit me." The king, hearing these words, and being restless, was pleased with the idea of listening to a story. And thus on the first night of the 1001, Scheherazade commenced her storytelling.
Non più tra I farfalloni amoroso, notte e giorno di torno girano, delle belle turbando al riposo.
Now, of course, I love this first story in Tales of Arabian Nights for two very probably obvious reasons. One, because it is a story that features a cunning, brave heroine. And secondly, stories save the day. How could I not be more a fan of this story when you've got just, an awesome heroine who is, through her cunning and bravery and courage, is able to save the day, and also through stories as like her weapon of choice. It's just the perfect bookish heroine for me. Now, the first thing you may have noticed is that this particular story that I read you is a little different than the ones that you're familiar with. One of the more popular editions, because there are different versions of the story. One of the more popular versions is the reason why King Shahar beheads his wife is because she is having an affair, and his brother finds out that his wife is having an affair, and the two of them are just like, you know who are the worst? Women. You turn your back and they have an affair, so chop their heads off and let's never trust women again. But this story features something different with the whole genie and this woman angle. And I sort of like this version a little bit better because of the magic element that's involved with the genie on the shore, but also this woman who really, the whole,
You gave love a bad name.
I mean, why does she say this thing that's horrible, that gives women such a bad name about, well, that's what happens when you trust women, and fall for their artifice and such, them dames, they'll cut your head off. She says this really awful thing about women, which is apparently from some, poet of the day, and why, I don't really know, because she has, if anyone does, she has, the perfect reason for cutting someone's head off. The genie steals her on her wedding night, let alone stealing her at all, right? It's never okay to steal someone away and lock them in a chest, but he does this on her wedding night, which makes it even worse. And then locks her in a chest, which he keeps under the sea, and every so often is like, I'm gonna take you out of the chest, and then I'll take a nap on your lap. I would cut his head off too. Cut. And maybe she says this whole thing about artifice just because she's like, who I hate is men, because this genie's a man? I don't know, so she's just kind of fed up, and she's like, oh yeah, women are the problem, obviously, not genies who steal you away and lock you in a trunk and put you under the sea. So she says this really troubling thing from some poet of the day, and it defames women. And the two princes are terrified by this because they're like, man, I guess that poet was right about women. And look at that woman. She's gonna cut off the genie's head one day. And if the genie, who is so strong and this great sort of giant of magic, if he is going to be tricked by a woman, how much more are we prey to what women can do? So we gotta stop trusting women. What's interesting is that this whole thing that the woman says about, don't trust a woman and the vows that she makes, and, how men fall prey to the artifice, that women's cunning and their plans of deceit, and they'll say one thing but they mean another, or they have something and they're plotting and planning, is that this is one of the things that he's largely afraid of. And in the story, Scheherazade, when she comes, she's not just coming to be his #bride for the day, #bride for the day. She's coming with a plan to save what she calls her people. She's coming with cunning, though it's not deceit. She's not just telling a story to tell a story. She's telling a story for a purpose, which is to distract him, to win him over, to make sure he doesn't keep killing women every single day that he marries one. And so it's very ironic because the very thing he was afraid of happening does happen to him. But guess what? It's not always a bad thing when women use their brains to kind of trick men, because this whole habit, because I think that's what he develops a habit of marrying a bride, then killing her the next day. This can't last. It's not good for the kingdom. It's not good for the people that he's supposed to be, serving. And she comes in with a plan to stop what it is he's been doing, because it can't continue this way. It's not good for the kingdom. But again, she doesn't do it outright. She doesn't go and be his bride and then say, you should stop killing women after you marry them, because the people don't like it. People are afraid of you. We're losing members of our kingdom because they're either running away or being beheaded. She doesn't come out and outright say it. She uses cunning to sort of trick him. And again, so it's just very funny that the cunning and the deceit he was afraid of is something he's actually met with, but it turns out to be a good thing. Because who would have thought that when we let women use their brains, they can also do good things, as well as evil Lady Macbeth type things.
Unsex me, gods. Lady Macbeth.
The last thing I want to talk about with this story is kind of going back to this whole idea of this awesome heroine we have in Scheherazade. The thing that I love so much about her character is that her attitude towards what's happening in the kingdom. She doesn't say to her father, I'll be his bride, and if I can stop it, then I can stop it, and then the kingdom won't have to suffer anymore. What she says is, either I shall die and be a ransom for one of the daughters of my people, or I will live and be the cause of their deliverance from him. What's important about this wording is the part where she says, the daughters of my people. And that's important for two reasons. The first one is the connection she has to this kingdom. She does not have ownership over this kingdom, but she speaks with such nobility and integrity. She already sees these people as in her charge because she sees what's happening. She sees herself as part of the community, and as part of the community, they are her people. She takes ownership for her people and her community, and then calls them, right, the daughters of my community, really humanizing these girls. These aren't just, hashtag brides for a day. These are women, these are daughters, like these are important people who shouldn't be wasted in this way. And she has this sisterhood, hashtag sisterhood of Scheherazade. She has this sisterhood and this idea of community with the people that she really doesn't have a legal obligation for, but she takes that on for herself. And so I love that part on her. And then that her father is like, I conjure thee, you won't put yourself in this kind of peril. And she's like, yeah, Dad, but I think I will. And she argues back and forth with him. And for a woman to be talking back to her father, right, and saying, Father, put me in this position. She wants to be on the chopping block if that's how it's going to be. She wants a chance at saving her people and being the ransom and the redemption for her people, and has to fight with her father, but her father finally lets her do it. Because Scheherazade probably, even if he said no, she would have found a way, sneak in the castle and be like, I'll be your hashtag bride for a day. And then, but let me tell you a story first. She would have found a way, I think, to sneak her way in. So I love Scheherazade's, sense of community, sense of sisterhood with the daughters who are dying and the daughters who are afraid, that they're going to be chosen next and die. That she puts her community ahead of herself, and also her determination and her courage, like how terrifying this is to be like, I hope this plan will work. I hope he likes stories, right? Another thing that's really neat about Scheherazade is that her superpower is in her reading and in her storytelling, right? It says the whole thing about, now Scheherazade had read many histories of ancient kings and works of poets before going to the king. Scheherazade couldn't have done that if she was an illiterate woman. She is a literate woman, right? In this day, she knows how to read. She has access to more than just, basic works. She has access to a library of works. This is such a boost for, educating women and the strength that women are able to get through education. So I love that. If you've never read Tales of Arabian Nights, I hope you enjoyed this particular story, and if you'd like to hear more, comment down below and let me know. As always, guys, I hope whatever you've been drinking has been good, the discussion and reading has been a fair match. Cheers, and cheers.
Nor rely upon their vows. They offer false affection, oh yeah, for perfidy lurks within their clothing. For greatly indeed to be wondered at he who hath kept himself safe from woman's artifice. Them dames are trouble, though. We got trouble. Right here in River City. That starts with D, which rhymes with P, which stands for pool. I mean, T, which rhymes with D, which stands for dames. Dames. Dames are trouble.
Boom.